accept $18 an hour to spend the night, alone at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Sounds easy, right? A quick buck in a quiet place. But what if, when you got there, the first thing you saw was a handwritten sign saying, "General instructions for survival"? What if, instead of colleagues, you had an old-fashioned phone that rings at exactly 2:33 in the morning, demanding that you say that he has already been fed? There is a gas station buried in the ice where reality bends, time fails, and the cold is just the beginning of the nightmare. Who are the children who knock on the door after midnight? Why can you never look a man in a suit in the eye? And most importantly, what happens if you break one of the rules? To understand what's behind this night shift, we need to go back to the first call. I arrived in Cold Pine on a silent afternoon, punctuated only by the irregular sound of the bus engine and the crunch of ice under the tires. The driver didn't even look at me when I got out. He simply closed the door and disappeared down the road, leaving me alone, in front of a white wasteland where everything seemed dead for decades. The wind was like a razor, the kind of cold that brings tears even to dry eyes. No sound, no soul, no cars. Just a dark line of asphalt tearing through the snow and calm about 200 meters away. A low building lit by a faded red sign, Gasoline and Supply Co. That was the post. I walked there with my backpack on my shoulders and the clear sensation of being watched by something that wasn't moving, but was there, in the middle of the frozen trees, under the endless white, maybe even under the ice. The gas station looked like a corpse kept alive by life support. One of the neon signs flickered. The windows were covered in a kind of condensation so thick I couldn't see anything inside. Inside, the light was orange and flickering, as if the bulbs were trapped between time and oblivion. I pushed the door open with effort. I was trapped by a cold that seemed to glue everything to the world, and entered. The smell was the first thing that hit me, a mixture of old fuel, stale coffee, damp wood, and something sweet, cloying, like rotten fruit left under the counter. There was no music, no radio, just the sound of the overhead heater vibrating like a tired animal. Behind the counter was a stack of old forms, a hissing metal kettle, and a rotary phone. Yes, a rotary phone, sitting like a cursed relic. My first thought was, $18 an hour to take care of this dead place? Great. But then I saw something. A small sign stuck behind the counter, handwritten in black marker were the words, "Night shift, general instructions for survival," and below, 7 numbered rules. At the time, I laughed. I thought it was some local joke, a crude attempt to scare newcomers or attract the curious. But something about the paper, the way it was folded, as if it had been reread many times, made my stomach churn. Before I could read any rules, the phone rang, and that's how it all began. The phone kept ringing. It wasn't a digital ringtone. It was metallic, loud, with that tremulous sound of a forgotten time, as if someone were calling from far away, or from long ago. I hesitated for a few seconds. Part of me said I shouldn't answer, but the silence of the station seemed more threatening than the sound itself. So I answered, "Hello?" A deep, hoarse voice answered, as if swallowing ice. "You're here. Great. This is Carl. Welcome to the night shift." His voice had a strange accent. It wasn't Alaskan. He sounded like someone who'd lived too long in places where words freeze in the mouth. He told me he was watching me through the camera. He asked me to look to the left corner of the store, and there it was. A tiny camera, blinking red. "Now pay attention, kid," he said. "This isn't like the other stations. You'll be alone, yes, but you'll never be truly alone. So you have to follow the rules. All of them. Or you won't make it past the first night." Silence. Then he began to dictate the rules, and I wrote them down even though I thought it was absurd. My hand was shaking, not from the cold, but from something I couldn't yet name. Rule 1. Never, under any circumstances, open the door to a child after midnight. It doesn't matter if they're crying, hurt, or asking for help. This it is not a child. Rule 2. At 2:33 a.m., the phone will ring. You should answer and simply say, "Swan, he's been fed," then hang up. Don't say anything else. Don't listen to what he says. Rule 3. If someone comes into the store wearing clothes that don't suit the weather, like a suit or light dress, don't make eye contact. Act normal. They won't notice you unless provoked. Rule 4. Never go out to refuel your car between 3 and 4 a.m. Even if someone honks the horn, even if you're asked, especially if there is no one inside. Rule 5. At 4 a.m. sharp, go to the refrigerator in the back and knock on the door 3 times. Wait 10 seconds. If nothing happens, continue your shift. If you hear someone knocking back, lock all the doors and hide in the bathroom until sunrise. Rule 6. If you find any children's drawings near pump 3, take them to the freezer and burn them with the lighter in your apron pocket. Always burn, never tear, never store. Rule 7. The man who shows up at 5 a.m. never speaks. He just smiles. Don't try to talk. Don't try to hide. Just smile back, nod, and wait for him to leave. After reading the last rule, Carl fell silent. I felt as if the air in the station had been sucked out for a moment. "Do you still want the job?" he asked, his tone no longer a voice. It was a sentence. I swallowed hard, and I replied, "I do. Good luck, kid." The phone hung up with a sharp click, and the next moment, the overhead light flickered, as if something in the darkness had just woken up. The first few hours passed in silence, a silence that was unnatural. It felt constructed, as if the sound were being kept at bay on purpose. The clock read 11:17 p.m. when the first client appeared. I didn't hear the engine. I only noticed their presence when the door sensor rang and a man entered, wearing an old brown suit, no coat, no gloves. His face was pale, almost blurred, like a hastily made doll. I forced myself to remember Rule 3, don't make eye contact. I kept my eyes on the counter. The man walked slowly to the snack shelf. He stood there, too long, as if he wasn't choosing anything, just waiting. Every second felt like an eternity. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. After about 3 minutes, he turned, walked silently to the door, and left. No sound, no words, no payment. The doorbell rang as he left, and with that, the artificial heat from the radiator seemed to vanish. A chill ran down my spine, and I knew in that instant that he wasn't the last. Midnight arrived. The second hand seemed slow, as if time were being forcibly stretched. Outside, I saw something moving. A small figure standing near pump 3, covered by a blue coat. Very thin, very still. A child. She was looking directly at me, through the fog of the foggy glass. Soft knocks echoed at the door. Tock, tock, tock. 3 rings, then silence. My throat was dry. My hands were sweating cold. "Sir," she said. Her voice was low but clear, as if she were right next to me. "I'm cold. Can you let me in?" I took a step away from the door. I wanted to run. I wanted to open it. I wanted to close my eyes and wake up somewhere else. But I remembered Rule 1, the most important one, the first one. It's not a child. She remained there, standing still, knocking occasionally, her expression unchanged, until, little by little, she began to back away, until she disappeared behind the post of pump 3. When I looked again, there was a drawing taped to the side of the bomb. I left trembling, lighter in my pocket. The wind cut my face like glass. I picked up the paper with gloves, without touching it. It was a child's drawing done with crayon, showing a smiling male figure, and a child with his face erased, completely blurred in black. I went to the freezer in the back and burned it. As the flames consumed the paper, I heard a sound coming from the door. The phone was ringing. I looked at the clock, 2:32. My breath caught. My hand shook as I lifted the receiver. He has already been fed. I hung up, but for a split second, I heard something on the other end of the line. Not a voice. It was like the sound of someone breathing very close to my ear. A heavy, wet, sick sigh. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and the worst was yet to come. It was around 3:10 a.m. when the cold started to change. It wasn't the same cold as before. This was different. Heavy, almost humid, as if the air were being filtered by something dead. The gas station windows froze from the inside out. I saw it happen, as if an entity were blowing ice behind the glass. The frost pattern formed spirals, curved lines that looked like letters or symbols. I approached slowly and saw something reflected in the glass. Outside, the child was back, this time closer, much closer. her face pressed against the window, but something was wrong. His nose was bleeding, his mouth was wide open, as if his jaw had been dislocated, and his eyes, if they were eyes, were dripping with thick black tears like ink. "Young man," she whispered, but her lips didn't move. The voice was inside the store, not outside, echoing behind me as if coming from the cleaning supplies shelf. "Young man, you shouldn't have burned the drawing." I turned around in a flash. Nothing. When I turned my eyes to the window, she had disappeared, and on the glass, where there had been frost, now there was handprints. Small, many, overlapping, some with very long fingers, others with only 3 phalanges. The door alarm rang. Alone. No one coming in, no wind, no movement. Then the radio at the cash register, which I hadn't even known worked, turned on by itself, static. But there was something there, behind the hiss. A voice, whispering in a language I'd never heard, but it sounded old. Wrong. The shelves began to creak, and I felt the temperature drop even further. That's when I heard the sound. Footsteps. Slow, wet, coming from the soda aisle. I ran to the counter and grabbed the flashlight. The light wavered, flickering as if it were being drained by some invisible force. I turned the flashlight toward the sound and saw footprints, wet, black, like someone had stepped in oil and walked around the store. But they weren't on the floor. They were on the ceiling. Black footprints, walking backwards, straight towards the back bathroom. At that moment, the clock struck 4:00. My mind froze. Rule 5. The refrigerator. I ran. I knocked 3 times on the frozen door of the cold room. 1, 2, 3, 10 seconds of silence. Then, 1 tap back, a deep sound, a dull thud as if something were being contained inside, something that didn't want to get stuck. I locked all the doors. I turned off the lights. I hid in the bathroom, as per the rules, and there I stood, with the sound of my breath caught, my teeth chattering from the cold, and something, on the other side of the wall, laughing. I don't know how long I was in the bathroom. The phone's clock was stuck at 4:44 even though the battery was still at 47%. When I finally worked up the courage to leave, the store was plunged into a viscous silence, like the aftermath of a nightmare that had left a trail. The marks on the glass were gone. The footprints on the ceiling were gone too, but the floor was still wet, and the smell of burning flesh lingered in the air. I went back to the counter. It wasn't long now. I repeated this like a mantra. It won't be long now. It's almost dawn. It was then that I heard the sound of the engine. A car. Something that night, seemed impossible. I looked out the window. An old black sedan was parked at pump 1. The headlights were on. The engine was still humming softly. I waited. Nobody came out. I took a step back. I remembered Rule 4. Never go out to refuel your car between 3 and 4 a.m., especially if there is no one inside. But it was already past 5 a.m. The rules were collapsing. Nothing made sense anymore. The front door opened by itself. A blast of warm air filled the room. Yes, warm. The Arctic chill was gone, as if hell had taken its place. The temperature rose so fast that the refrigerator glass cracked. The shelves began to sweat. My face felt clammy, as if I were in a sauna or an oven. And then, he came in. The man. It was impossible to confuse. Tall, hairless. His skin was charred black as coal, but still dripping with a thick, dark, boiling liquid. Each step left a scorch mark on the floor. The eyes, 2 burning cavities, and the mouth, open in a fixed smile, toothless, just melted flesh. He didn't speak. He just looked at me, and he smiled. Rule 7. The man who shows up at 5 a.m. never speaks. He just smiles. Don't try to talk. Don't try to hide. Just smile back. I tried. I swear on everything I tried. But terror paralyzed me. The smile I managed was a spasm of despair. My legs trembled, my bladder nearly gave out. This wasn't human. This shouldn't exist. He took another step, then another, and when he stopped in front of me, he whispered. You shouldn't have heard the breathing. My knees gave out. I fell, and he just turned his back and left. The car was still outside, engine running, but there was something different now. Someone sitting in the passenger seat. It was Carl, or something that seemed a Carl. Same coat, same cap, but the face, it was just a loose mask of flesh over something darker, older. He looked at me and smiled too, the same smile as the burned man. "Good turn, kid," he said, his lips still still. "You learned quickly, but don't forget. The next night is always harder." The car disappeared down the road, with no engine noise, no tire tracks, and I stood there, with the warm air dissipating and the cold returning. Slowly, the sun hasn't risen. In Alaska in December, it only threatens to rise, but never actually does. But something changed in the sky. A dim, gray light began to spread across the horizon, as if the world were slowly turning again. Night was finally beginning to give way. The clock started working again, 06:08. The door to the station opened with the sound of bells. It was the new shift. A young man named Jeremy, young with headphones on and a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked at me with a smile, until he noticed my condition: sweaty clothes, pale face, soot-stained hands. "The first night is always tense, right?" he said, as if it were normal. I just shook my head. I went to the back and grabbed my backpack. My fingers trembled as I touched the doorknob. Before leaving, Jeremy gave me a warning. "Oh, I almost forgot. If you find any drawings, burn them. Always. This is serious." I nodded. I didn't say a word. I walked to the road, where an old pickup truck was serving employees sleeping out of town. I got in, sat in the back seat, and finally took a deep breath. But that air was never the same again. That cold had entered me, and stayed. Days later, I tried calling the gas station's number back. Just a buzzing sound. I tried Googling. The post did not exist. Or rather, it existed, but the building had been closed in 1997, after a fire. A fire that started during a night shift. The only thing left was an archived page of a job posting, the same one I'd responded to. And at the bottom, written in small red letters, was one last sentence. "If you're reading this, it's already too late. The protagonist survived, but he was never the same again." The cold entered the bones, and stayed. And worst of all, the post no longer exists. At least, that's what they say. If you want to find out what really happens when the clock strikes 2:33 in the morning, the link to our exclusive ebook is in the pinned comments. But be careful. If you hear a knock on the door after midnight, don't open it. Never.